Being human. Do you ever wonder what makes us who we are? Our habits, preferences, or where we came from? We are expressing ourselves in thousands of ways every day through our choices. Let's have a conversation with people who are having interesting lives. My name is Alun Walker. I'm a doctor of chiropractic and a human being. Well, thank you for joining us for the 10th podcast on being human. Today we've got a great friend of mine, Paul Miller. Paul is a chiropractor of 25 years, and Paul has been my mentor even while I was actually at university, and still is my mentor today. So Paul, welcome to Being Human, and I'm hoping today you'll have an opportunity to talk to us about lots of different things, including nutrition, health, and most importantly about why you chose to actually become a chiropractor.
Alan, it's lovely to be here and good to see you looking so well and loving the glasses.
Oh, yeah, I'm not loving the glasses.
We need the Bates method, don't we? Yes.
I didn't even ask too much about that.
The Bates method for eyesight improvement.
Oh, is it? Could you just explain a bit about this?
Well, from what I understand, there was a guy in the 1890s in New York, a guy by the name of Bates, synonymous, I think, with glasses anyway. I think Bates Opticians, and he found that he could improve eyesight by a certain training regime that includes things like palming and long swinging and sunning and all these different things that sound a bit wacky, but I've seen countless testimonials from people who quite, literally claim to have thrown away their glasses. So I think Joe McCullough is one of them, Dr. Joe McCullough, and he swears by it. So I guess it must be true.
So is this something you can look at, anyone listening could actually look at on the internet and find more information on this? Absolutely.
I mean, there's been books written on it. There's I can't remember. There's a guy, John. Can't think of. There's an American chiropractor who does a podcast, and he speaks John Bergman. That's it, and he speaks extensively about it. Yeah. So I think it's for real.
Paul, a good way to start off is just a little bit. Really explain about yourself, about where you're sort of born and bred.
Listen, you can ask whatever you like. So basically, a Dorset boy, born and bred, and grew up in lovely Dorset, very rural, and just, I suppose, an average upbringing, nothing in particular about it. But through school, I was a little bit of a rebel, didn't really find school particularly interesting. I found most of the lessons fairly pointless because I couldn't see a practical application for them. With someone like me, I'll have to see an application for whatever I'm learning, because if it doesn't have a real world application, I just switch off. And that's pretty much what happened. But if you put me in the metalwork room or the woodwork room, I was happy because I was making stuff and it all made sense. So academically didn't excel, and consequently got out into the real world and got it. First thing I ever did was an engineering apprenticeship, and that was really great because I loved it, because I love machining. They would give me drawings and I would make whatever was asked of me, and I was very happy. But unfortunately the company went bust, and along with it my engineering apprenticeship. So for a number of years I just floated around, ski bum. That was interesting, being a ski bum, and just really was searching for something in life. And what happened then is I got an opportunity to go to South Africa. And it's quite a long story, so I won't go into all the nitty gritty of why I was there and how I got there. But what I found when I got there was that South Africans have two rules in life. One is you work hard, and the second one is you play hard. And I knew the second one, but I didn't know the first one very well. So I had to learn to work hard, and because that was the ethic there, was that you had to do that. And once I cracked onto that, and I got into that vibe of working hard, playing hard, and enjoying life, which I did, it was great. And I learned a lot from them. And that mindset and also never, sort of never giving up as well. They're very tenacious people. So that was really part of my journey. When I was out in South Africa, I got into the fitness bug because I was a wimpy white pom, remember, with a bit of a belly where I drank too much beer. I hate to say this, but at that time I did smoke cigarettes as well. And so all in all, I was seeing all these super fit, sort of tanned people around me. And I thought, I want some of that. So I joined the gym and really got into it. And from that point, decided that I wanted to spend my life teaching fitness. And so that's what I did. I came back to the UK, went to the Central YMCA in London, did a load of courses there, and started up as a freelance fitness instructor, and which I loved. And it suited me, and I was always down in the gym and blah, blah, blah. But it began to dawn upon me as my 40s approached that maybe I wasn't going to be able to do this forever. Me personally, I'm not saying everybody, but for me personally. So I started to cast my net around looking for something to do that wasn't quite strenuous on my body and that would, I'd be honest with you, give me a good living as well, because that's how it started out. And fortunately, I found an advert for the McTimoney College of Chiropractic, and I met them and they said, yeah, you seem like our kind of guy. You're not educated enough. You've been a bit of an idiot at school, obviously. And so they said, go on a couple of courses, then contact us when you've done that. And if you've got the qualifications, we'll take you on. And they very kindly did. And so I did my 4 years at McTimoney and really liked it. Still love the technique to this day. And all was well. But me being me, I wanted to push the envelope a little bit. And so I managed to get on a course at the ACC in Bournemouth to learn the diversified manipulation tool set. And that was great. And, it sort of opened up new horizons, and, chiropractic suddenly had a much broader reach with me, and I was able to help more people. And, that really, I suppose those two events, or those two time periods, brought me to where I am now, which is a qualified chiropractor. I've been in practice now for 24 years and mentored a few people as well. I've got a lovely young lady called Stephanie who's also being mentored by me. So she's going through the McTimoney course, and when she comes out, we'll really start to work on her. So yeah, life's been pretty good indeed.
When was the first time you actually saw chiropractic being used?
So there's a story there in itself. Many years ago, when I lived in the small village I lived in, we had a doctor who was very alternative. He was always out running when everyone else thought that was a bit nerdy. And he liked sort of more natural treatments. And he went on what I believe they called a Cyriax course, which was a form of physiotherapy-driven manipulation. And I think he thought, well, Paul's a fit, healthy young chap. I think I'll try out my manipulative skills on him. And so that's what he did. So he put a pillow on my back and he crunched me this way, and he gave me master cervicals and crunched me that way. And I thought, hey, actually that felt quite good. And so that was my first ever introduction to it. And then during the course of my time as a physical fitness instructor, I saw people get injured, and they often spoke of going to see the chiropractor. So I thought, this mystical guy, the chiropractor, a lot of people seem to want to use his services. And so that really was the two introductory components of it, I suppose, Alan. And that's what drove it, was that first initial exposure to it, and then hearing people that have used it and the miraculous results that it got, and they got rid of their injuries. And this is when I looked at chiropractic through the lens of injury reduction. Obviously, I see it differently now. I see it as more of a background health modulator as well. I see it somewhat differently. I don't see it as just as the treatment of musculoskeletal injuries. I see it as more than that, a lot more. I suppose, again, using anecdotes, I'll use an anecdote of my own. I was quite keen on running at one point, even after I finished as a fitness instructor. I noticed my times were really dropping off a bit, and I was kind of feeling a bit achy and a bit out of sorts. And I saw a friend of mine who's a great chiropractor, David Coltman, over in the Isle of Wight. I think you know David, super guy.
I do.
And yeah, he gave me a really good workout, and I felt great. You know, a little bit bruised actually in a couple of places where he really sort of did a bit of soft tissue work as well. But I got home, and the next day I went for a run, and over my 5 miler, I think I knocked 2 minutes off, which and there was no other explanation for it other than what he'd done, because nothing else had changed. Apart from I had a really tiring day the day before. So technically I should have been a bit of a low ebb actually, but his work made all the difference. So using that as an anecdote, you know, personal, but you see it in other people and they say, oh, I can see more clearly. You know, I seem to regulate, my digestive tract seems to regulate, I sleep better. It all seems to bring everything together full circle. And yeah, I think that's why it's such a powerful tool in today's somewhat sick society, sadly.
Yeah, I'd agree. Have you ever heard of people getting pregnant as well? It's a bit of a funny comedy type of side to this, isn't it? So,
Well,
you know, had chiropractic, been trying for years, and then had some chiropractic work done, and the next minute, the couple they've got a baby on the way.
I admit to no responsibility, I'm sorry.
I knew you were going to say that.
But one
But
thing I
it's
can tell you, Alan, over in Cerne Abbas, there's a hill chalk carving called the Cerne Giant.
I've seen it.
Yes, well, he's got a rather large phallus, and apparently, if you go and sit on the tip of that, if you're a female and you're looking to get pregnant, it's 100% guaranteed. So become the daughter.
Of course it is. Of course it is, and no one's going to photograph that, are they? These days, I believe that most of our ill health is coming through something that we can actually control ourselves, which is actually through the food that we're buying, the food that we're eating. Where do you think that diet and nutrition has gone wrong recently, and where do you think we need to go in the future if we're going to be giving people the right information?
Well, there's a little laundry list of things, really. I think the introduction of seed oils has been horrible for our health. And so the margarines, the man-made oils, and the like, rather than fruit oils, which are pressed and natural, animal fats, and you know, sort of tallow, lard, all that kind of stuff, things that you find naturally occurring in nature, which to my mind don't have the same inflammatory effect that the seed oils do. And going on from that, of course.
Sorry to put it in. Talking about cold pressed oils.
Yeah, so with things you know, like olive oil, it's cold pressed, isn't it? It's basically the natural juice of the fruit. And with seed oils, they have to go through many different processes. That's certainly my understanding. And you get something that comes out that oxidizes very quickly, is not particularly stable at high temperature. Lots of free radicals are produced when it's cooked in, and so on and so forth. And you can only assume, looking at the record of this stuff and how things have got worse with cardiovascular health, that this is certainly a problem. And further to that, obviously, there's an increased sugar consumption. So we've developed a very sweet tooth as a society, and carbohydrates. Obviously, that's the sort of long chains of sugar. Again, carbohydrates in the forms of flours, you know, sort of all the farinaceous foods. Again, they seem to be giving us this readily available source of energy, but it's too abundant, and that's driving in the background inflammation and pre-diabetes and eventually type 2 diabetes. So, you know, just putting those two things together, the seed oils and you know, how rancid they go, and you know, how bad they are to cook in, then coupling that with farinaceous foods and sugar, and you've got a really toxic brew. And that's before you even get into processed foods and numbers and all the other unnatural chemicals that seem to be occurring and cropping up in our convenient society. And I think what it is also people have lost the art of cooking as well. They're running 2 jobs, or the husband and the wife are both cooking. The kids need feeding, so they'll naturally reach for the easy option, and I don't blame them. But ultimately, I think we're starting our children off with that horrible situation of having underlying health problems, because they're seeing children as young as 12 now with diabetes, which is dreadful, really. Because again, they're not getting the exercise perhaps they did in the past, like you and I are out on the bikes, blah blah blah. No computer games, or certainly not many around. And so I think it's a really toxic brew, to be perfectly honest with you, Alan. I really do.
So, Paul, just if you don't mind me asking the question about the differences between keto, carnivore diets, what's the difference between those two as you see it?
Well, I suppose carnivore is an extension of keto, in the sense that with ketogenic diet, you are allowed to have up to 20 grams of carbohydrate, and with a carnivore, it's supposedly supposed to be zero carbohydrate. So that's the main difference. So it would mean that there are certain foods that you could eat within the keto, the sort of keto space, that wouldn't be tolerated on the carnivore diet if you're going to be really strict about these things. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not, inverted commas, strict. I do fall off the wagon because my wife's an absolutely fantastic cook, and that means that when there's really nice food around or a family occasion, I'm going to put everything aside and just say, right, for this day, I will enjoy other types of food. So what generally tends to happen is during the week, I'm really quite strict. And then come sort of the weekend or Friday night, say tonight, for example, a glass of red wine will come out. Great. Over the weekend, there may be a few treats in there, but come Sunday evening, we're back. We're back in the room. So that's how it works for me. And I think that works for some people that way, unless they're really, really sick and they have to go really, really strict. And I think that those are the sort of the major differences, and certainly how I would perceive things as being. They can be a bit more fluid, I suppose. And I think we mentioned in the past about fasting, which is something that is really dear to my heart, because for 2 days a week, I'll do a 24-hour fast. So prior to going to my other clinic in Glastonbury, I will eat my last meal at 7 o'clock and then go all the way through till I get home 7 or 8 o'clock the next evening without eating. I'll just be having water. But I feel mentally at my sharpest when I've done that. I feel incredibly sharp. I'm using ketone bodies to power my body, my energy. And that for me is absolutely a huge part of my week now. So for 2 days, for 2 days a week, the 24-hour fast is wonderful. And during that time, we get, you get all your, the body that goes into a cleanup mode. So it's scavenging proteins that need breaking down and cells that need breaking down. And it's, you're getting BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, to repair your brain. And you're using up your glycogen stores and so on, and you're making yourself more insulin sensitive. I mean, it's just a total win-win situation if you really crave health, which which is something I think I probably do now. I crave health. I'm always looking for the latest hack, to improve health. And I think as you get older, I think you start to do that more because you see people around you becoming sicker, and perhaps they're not really grasping the nettle. They're not saying to themselves, I need to change. So you use that really as a kick up the arse to make sure that you do change in order that you can maintain your health, maintain your lifestyle, maintain your work and everything else. I mean, I've said to myself that I really want to work into my 70s and beyond if I'm able to do that. So for me, that's a super important thing. So, I'm staring 60 in the face now. So I'd love to be able to go at least another 15 years working. Man, that would be amazing.
The crazy thing is, Paul, is that in this country, people have this conversation, and what you've just said would be, everyone would understand. They'd be going, yeah, that would be good. That would be good. In China, it's bloody normal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is, they're working till that age in China, and they're 80s, and they're babysitting, and they're living. They're not living in the cities. Hopefully, they're living out in the villages, and they're just having to work because they can't. There's no other way. Yeah. So I don't know whether it's a psyche shift we need in this country, or whether that we have poisoned ourselves and that we're not living. We haven't got that same health as they have in some of the other places.
Well, I don't agree with retirement anyway. I think that what should be happening is we should be slowly stepping down as the years go by. So you're able to dedicate a bit more time to leisure and doing the things outside of chiropractic and dietary instruction, to the windsurfing, which I also love, and
Yeah.
or going out for a long walk with my wife and the dog and all that kind of stuff. And as your children grow up, I think you can do more of that. But graduating and tailing off your career, so maybe as in your 70s and 80s, you're still working, but maybe 2 to 3 days a week or
Yeah.
whatever you feel you can. I think it's a far more satisfying way to be spending your time, because you're getting the best of both worlds then.
Yeah, it's heavy work being a chiropractor as well.
Yeah,
It's not light work, is it?
no.
So with yourself, Paul, do you mind me asking what days you fast? What day is it that which days of the week you tend to do
Yeah.
this?
So that's the Tuesday and the Thursday. So those are the 2 days I go to Glastonbury. And because it is incredibly busy, people out there really take their chiropractic seriously in Glastonbury. I don't get a chance to sit around and, eat food. So I'd rather just, have my secretary bring me a few cups of tea. Technically, there's some calories in that, but not much. And just blast through the day, see the people that I need to see and deliver the adjustments I need to deliver, and everyone's happy. And when I get home, I'm super, super hungry, very insulin sensitive, and I eat the food, and it tastes fantastic as well, because it
Yeah.
sharpens your palate and everything, and that's how I roll, really.
So you're counting the fasting for Tuesday when you have your last meal on Monday evening.
So Monday evening, 7 o'clock, boom, that's it, job done, apart from water. And then all the way through the night, nothing in the morning, on to work, come home late because it's an hour from me, Glastonbury, from here in Dorchester. And yeah, that's what works. That's as I say, it's I've been doing it now for about three maybe 4 years now, and it's just been amazing, because obviously you're burning calories at the same time, and you're starting to learn to become more of a fat burner rather than a glycogen burner. And again, that's something that I think we need to be able to have, is this metabolic flexibility, so we can switch between different food sources, even if you're not especially if you're not doing carnivore, or keto. You need to have that metabolic flexibility, I think.
How does it work then, Paul? Say I've got some friends and they were struggling to lose weight. In fact, every year they seem to be putting on a few more pounds year on year on.
Yeah,
Uh, they're eating things like it's Friday night, it's fish and chips. Not that there's anything wrong with fish and chips, but the Friday night fish and
yeah,
chips. Along the lines, Saturday they have some friends round. It's like, I don't want to cook. Let's order a Domino's.
yeah.
What's actually happening in their stomach? What's happening to their system by taking forward those two types of food? Chips cooked in fat, fish with batter, with the oil they're using,
Yeah,
and then followed up by with all the carbohydrates,
yeah.
with a big pizza party on the Saturday night, the day after. Is it these types of things that are causing the problems? And if it is, what's happening with the bodies?
So it's death by a thousand cuts, really, isn't it? Um, I think yes, there is. I think it's a book. I might be wrong. Maybe you can correct me, but it's called "The Long Silent Scream of the Liver," and it describes over decades that the liver's saying, "Look, excuse me, I'm having a really hard time detoxifying all this crap that you're eating, and all the alcohol that you're drinking, if you're drinking a lot." And then eventually it goes, bang, I've had enough. And you're into non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or worse. And so I think when people are doing I think the occasional treat is okay. As I said, I'm not, I'm no Puritan myself. But I think what we have to get our heads around is that if we are good for most of the time, we can allow ourselves a little bit of latitude, especially if you're not metabolically sick as I was. And I think that's the way we have to look at it. Is just trying to remove the so-called bad stuff and put in the good stuff. So when you do have the occasion where you go off the rails, it's not a complete train wreck because you're not adding to that toxic tally that's going on. You're not getting these aged glycated end products, the glycation going on in all the tissues of your body, giving you that stiffness. So when you get out of bed in the morning, you're no longer feeling like an ironing board, because you're not eating all the sugar. It has this really detrimental effect on all the connective tissue. As the fascial planes move over each other, they should be nice and smooth and springy. But when you eat loads of sugar, it denatures them horribly. And, so people complain of mental fog, headaches, stiffness, and, probably things like low libido and things like that, which is simply because they're just so energy deprived, because they're trying to utilize glycogen and they're not utilizing the fat at all, but they become insulin insensitive. So you get into this horrible loop: more insulin, more glycogen. Neither of them, the glycogen certainly not making its way into the cells to power them up. So you've got to go into a different way of eating and relearning your whole metabolic structure, and the way you power yourself. And that's where keto and certainly carnivore and all those other things come in.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I still haven't done anything like enough reading with the differences of diets and how it can change the appalling factor of putting on weight, poundage year after year after year. And with my clients, and I know that most chiropractors do, and I'm sure you do as well, Paul. When they come for their consultation, one of the first things we do is put them on the scales, and they're always shocked. They don't want to go on the scales, the women especially, some of the men, and they're all surprised by the weights that they are since the last time they weighed themselves. And I'm thinking, if they do that year on year, then that's the reason why we start getting to this horrible situation of diabetes type 2 or post-diabetes and worse. And of course, we know ourselves that diabetes will eventually turn into lots of other horrible diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the things I would say to you, Alan, is that I use Burra scales, which are they're a form of bioimpedance scales. And what they do is they, using very complex algorithms, they will give you a fairly accurate, because they're sort of, I suppose, home scales plus, accurate assessment of what your protein content is, your water content, your fat content, i.e., what percentage of you is body fat, but very importantly, what's going on in the inside. And this is the point I actually wanted to make a minute ago and forgot to actually, is about internal fat storage. So what we call central adiposity, because that's the one that is really key to it. I mean, you can have a 25-stone sumo wrestler who, in all honesty, could actually be metabolically healthy, even though, he's got rolls of fat on him. And yet you could have a really skinny guy, what you call, I guess you call it fat boy slim is the interpretation I use. And they've got stacks of central adiposity, because something called lipodystrophy means that their fat stores are distributed in different ways. So not necessarily on the outside, but more on the inside. And that's the real killer, because you can't see them coming, those people. They really are, the train wreck ready to happen. So, but nevertheless, you still dial it back to what is it that they're eating that has allowed those fat stores to accumulate, regardless of what portion of the body they're actually in. So, but yes, you're right. The pound on pound, yearly increase is a pretty good sign that there's something going wrong. Because, as in my opinion, this is just my opinion, as time goes by, as soon as you hit your 40s, metabolically you start to slow down a bit, and the utilization of all this food coming in just doesn't happen. So we need to change, basically.
What's your opinion of what do you know? What have you learned about diabetes and about how it can roll onto some of the other diseases? Do you think diabetes and the way we eat is affecting certainly the Western world's health?
Well, I think again we can look at somewhere like the United States, and we're not far behind. And I think the statistic is that only 12% of the population are metabolically healthy.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just, that isn't even the 80-20 rule, is it?
no,
You can't even put
it's gone
that down to a
beyond.
universal rule. That's just horrible.
Yeah, yeah, it's really shocking. It's depressing, and you know, it's when you look at that kind of statistic, you have to say to yourself something is going wrong. And the idea that of the idea of the heart lipid hypothesis, the Ansel Keys thing, that we should all be eating grains and all these high calorie, that sort of fructose and corn syrup and all these things should be in our diet is for the birds, because just looking at that one statistic tells us that there's something very seriously going wrong here, and that something has to be done to change it. 88% is an enormous amount of potential illness, because of course you're looking at diabetic retinopathy, you're looking at diabetic foot, you're looking at coronary artery disease, which is another, an extension of diabetes for sure. Heart disease and diabetes go together like mom and apple pie. There's no question about it. So, obviously, as I say, there are different levels of sensitivity to this, and some people will be a bit more able to tolerate a certain amount more carbohydrates than others. But you have to find your own personal threshold, and I think that point comes when your weight is stable. You're not putting it on, and you're not losing it necessarily, and you've got a good lean mass of tissue versus obviously your adipose tissue. When the ratio is good and you're running it about, sort of, for men, say about 12 to 15% body fat, you're in the sweet spot then, aren't you?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, as far as diet goes, including the problems of diabetes type 2, and then moving into worse? And then also, do you believe that when people start getting into those type of metabolic problems, that next can come? What do you think? There's a connection there? Have you read connections with MS, with Parkinson's, with dementia?
Oh yeah. Again, there is a lot of research being done now about the gut microbiome and the way in which, if you're feeding these pathogens, let's say um, your intestinal tract, you're starting to get migration of commensals and pathogens coming up from the ileocecal valve or past the ileocecal valve into the small intestine, and you're starting to have this really toxic brew of things going on in SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If that is happening, and that is then starting to affect the tissues around it, starting to affect the immune system, starting to affect the vagus nerve. These things are tracking up into the central nervous system, and it has been hypothesized that Parkinson's could be a direct result of this. These pathogens tracking up through that nerve, and also by simply the amount of lipopolysaccharide poisoning your small intestine and causing the leaky gut, along with other nutrients like anti-nutrients really, such as gluten, and causing the autoimmunity that seems to be driving so much of the ill health that we're looking at in the Western world. It's a really big deal, and it's very complicated. That's just scratching the surface.
Do you mind, Paul, because there will be some people that aren't watching this that might not be chiropractors or GPs, whatever. In layman's terms, we're talking about food products going through the stomach, through the stomach layer, going out into the rest of the body. You're talking also about food going through the intestinal tract and breaking through the barriers there. Is that right?
Yeah. So you've got these things called tight junctions in the intestinal tract, and it's deemed that things like gluten seem to have a very pernicious effect on the lumen of the small intestine, and you get fenestrations, sometimes known as leaky gut, which allows parasites, lipopolysaccharide, dead bacteria, all these things to start to leach in. And after a while, bearing in mind that over 80% of your immune system resides within on the outside of the intestinal tract, it's very clear that it's going to get stimulated at some point, and it's going to start to then mount an immune reaction to what is actually happening. So it's autoimmune, because then it starts to kick off problems all over the body. So you might see subtle signs like things like vitiligo, which is seen as really bottom of the tree in terms, of autoimmunity, but it is a sign that there is something going on in the background. Or you might start to get sort of itchy palms or itchy skin or rashes. Any of these things are sort of like the subtle signs that something is bigger is bubbling away underneath the surface. And given, I would say, 70% of all the modern ailments that we see are now derived from inflammation, and certainly I would say that portal is the gut, because that's where we're really exposed to most of our pathogens. We've got to clean up our act, as a species, and start to live a more natural lifestyle with regard to food, and also to make it very unique and individual to each and every one of us. That's what I would say. But that's not everyone may believe that, but it's certainly where I am with this.
Well, there's so many different ideas around by many smart people at the moment, and I think that there's the truth in it all is that everyone there's some truth in what they're thinking. There's some truth in their theory, isn't it? We would speak about leaky gut, etc. Products that shouldn't be there, moving into other parts of the body and causing problems on a very basic level. Talking about sugar and how sugar and certain carbohydrates can damage other parts of our body. What do you know about how they can damage certain parts of our brain? So sugar.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So the term type 3 diabetes is now being bandied around, because what it seems to happen if you've got too much sugar floating around in your bloodstream, that can waltz straight over your blood-brain barrier, no questions asked, whereas the insulin doesn't. So what happens is you start to get too much glucose in the central nervous system, and it becomes overwhelmed. It's swimming in a sea of energy, and like any other tissue that's metabolically active, I mean, the brain is very metabolically active. 3% of the body's weight and 25% of the body's energy uptake. But it can also undergo diabetic change in the sense that it can't use the sugar. The insulin simply is not available to deal with that amount of sugar, and the brain then is starving in a sea of potential energy. And that's known as type 3 diabetes. And it does seem to be a thing. And also it causes neuroinflammation, and which obviously in itself leads to poorer mental health. And, there's just so many things. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And, the wheels within wheels and all the cogs just all intermesh, and they keep churning away, but sometimes with very deleterious effects, I might say.
God, I mean, there's so many questions I've got, and there's so much that we could talk about, but I think that we've probably covered a good starting point today, and I really hope that we can ask you to come back again for another one of these podcasts where we can talk about that. You've just got such a vast knowledge when it comes down to general health and dietary health as well. So I'd hope that you'd come back, but it's been brilliant having you on. I want to thank you so much for coming on and helping me with this podcast today, Paul. In fact, I'd like to follow it on with another one. Perhaps we could start talking about that now, because there's so many more questions I've got, and that is not enough time.
Yeah. Listen, there's never enough time when you get onto a subject as vast as this. So just even if there's just even a few ideas to get people started, maybe thinking about their own health, maybe reaching out to a functional medicine doctor or a chiropractor with functional medicine skills, just starting to make a few changes. Just to finish this conversation, what I would say to people is just start to take, if you're starting to feel sluggish, if you're putting on weight, if you're hitting your 40s, if you just start to maybe dial back on the carbohydrates, just a little bit, maybe take out the bread with the gluten just to see if that's affecting you. Just start to dial it back and see how you feel. You don't have to go the whole hog, but just start to make a few changes. Maybe get out, do your 24, 30, 40-minute walk every other day, all those things. And just that will be a great start. So if it just encourages people just to even do that, then this whole conversation is, well, it's always worthwhile with you, Alan, anyway, but you know what I mean? It will add something to someone's life that may add potentially many good years to their life. So that's really what we're about, isn't it, as chiropractors?
Without a doubt. So my suggestion is that the next one that we would do would be on wheat. Wheat,
Yeah.
sugar and salt, I think would
And
be
saunas.
and
Saunas.
oh yes, of course, yeah, of course, the saunas, which is something that you're very, very big into, raising the temperature of the body as well. And we might as well talk about ice baths as well. I could add to that. So yeah, that would be great. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. If you've really enjoyed this podcast today, then please share it with other people. And if you don't mind, like and subscribe, that would be awesome. Thanks very much for listening to the 10th of the podcast on being human. Thank you.
Bye, Alan. Take care.
Thank you, Paul.